Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Haunt of Love and Lies. Episode 14. Chapter 123. Killian's point of view. I kept stroking hard on the paper with my quill pen, moving at a great speed. I was at my office, making my time worthwhile, attending to some pack business. I have never been so grateful for the truckload of work I had to tend to. It was the only thing keeping my mind and soul together, regardless of how tiresome it was, and I tried not to think about anything at all. But even with the exhaustion and sleepless nights, there were some things that I wished could be forgotten, like the situation with Thea, while there are some things that I never want to forget, like Sheila. It's been 2 days since she left the pack and she hasn't been back yet, nor have I heard anything from her, even though Morgan still somehow communicates with her. It's really so frustrating to be completely shut out, especially when it has to do with my mate. I had never felt so far from her, both physically and through our bond. I couldn't even feel her, or connect with her. I guess she blocked me. I sighed, tossing the quill pen away on the table, its black ink splashing on the papers covering my table. I stood up from my seat, flexing my legs to the window, boring hard into the darkness just outside. I felt a chilling sadness inside. I could only wonder what Sheila was doing at this second and if she was thinking of me. I had promised myself to give her space and time, but 2 days without her felt like 2 torturous lifetimes without her. It's suffocating, but I still try to have hope that she'll come back to me. I massaged my aching temples. I didn't even know if waiting for her to come was the right choice. For several hours, I had contemplated going to the Black Blood Pack, not to force her back with me, but just to talk with her. But I knew that was impossible. Leonardo and Kaiser wouldn't even let me past their territory, and I didn't want to go there to make trouble and give Sheila another reason to despise me. So I decided to send a letter to her instead, but the chances of it reaching Sheila's hands were 0, not with her brothers there. Even I would try to cut off all interactions between Sheila and me if I had a sister. Not even the idea of Valerie transporting me there to see Sheila without her brother's knowledge was good enough. Sheila would probably despise me still. So I am forced to wait, and make prayers to the moon goddess to help me keep my mate. I couldn't possibly live without her. I shoved both of my hands into my pockets, jerking abruptly from my thoughts when the door made a loud sound. I spun around to find Valerie standing at the door, her purple eyes fixed on me. I have been knocking for hours now, she stated, flatly, obviously exaggerating a little bit, but I had been lost in my thoughts that I didn't even hear. I apologize, please come in, I said, strutting back to my table as Valerie closed the door behind me. She ambled closer to the table and settled into the seat opposite mine as her purple irises examined me carelessly. For the record, she began, but I swept back tendrils of my hair, cutting her off. I know. I don't look good, those were words I have been accustomed to hearing the past 2 days. How is she? I was direct. I know Valerie had visited Sheila at Leonardo's pack. She's fine and safe. No one knows she's there, Valerie said, and I felt both hurt and relieved at the same time. I need your help, I said to Valerie. I had requested to see her, after the news Morgan received from his friends in the south who were making findings on Thea. Unfortunately, they couldn't find anything on her, and the fact we had no traceable information on Thea, complicated everything. "You know I will always be ready to help," Valerie's words made me smile, thankfully. "So what is it?" "It's about Thea," I said, and Valerie leaned back on her chair, listening calmly. This was my last option to find out something about Thea. As the day went by, I was more certain she was hiding something, and everything she told me was false. It's almost like I had become obsessed with finding out the truth about Thea, but that's not the case. I was so furious with myself that I couldn't see past her faux identity and pretense. I just wanted to know who that woman was, and if her presence in my life was a plan. I was curious to find out everything I could about Thea Chrysler. "And what about her?" Valerie asked, after regarding me a second in silence. "I need your help to find out as much information as I can on her. I want to know who she is. She said she's from a pack in the south and her previous alpha was after her life. I want to know if that's the truth," I voiced calmly while Valerie listened. "Why the curiosity all of the sudden?" she questioned, and I shook my head. "Frankly, I don't know. These past weeks, I have been having these feelings in my gut. There's something off about Thea that I am surprised, just realizing," I muttered. "Don't look at me like that, Valerie, you know I couldn't just make this up to get rid of her," I added. No matter who Thea was, that didn't change the fact that she was expecting my child. I just wanted to know the woman I had brought into my pack and my life. "Fine, I can't do much like finding out her previous pack, or why the alpha was after her life, but I could find out about her true identity and her parents' ancestry," she uttered. I exhaled in elation, resting my fingers under my chin. "That's just wonderful, Valerie, that was exactly what I needed. If I knew about Thea's family, I could find her previous pack and learn more about her. But before I could do that, I need something." Her words caused my smile to vanish. "Some things like what?" I queried. "Something that belongs to Thea. Something personal, and holds some kind of significance to her. I need it for the spell I'll make. It must be something she came here with." Valerie finished, and I huffed exhausted. "That would be difficult, and almost impossible. Thea came here brutally wounded, and without anything in her possession," I told her. "There must be something, Killian. A piece of jewelry, a family heirloom, anything." "She must have something," Valerie said. And I paused for a second to think. I really didn't remember anything from the day she came, and with my time with her, I didn't notice anything. But I'll have to find something. This was the last option I had to unravel this mystery behind Thea. "I will find something." "Is that all you need?" I asked her. "Just a personal belonging, and a strand of her hair, and that's it," she sounded. "Great, I will find a way to get them," I exhaled, realizing I had to go to her chamber to obtain all of them. I haven't seen her since Sheila left, and I didn't want to. But now, I had no choice. "Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate this," I was sincere with my words. "I really appreciated everything she does for me and the pack." "There's no need for that, Killian," she said, thinking briefly before parting her lips to speak again. "I don't mean to meddle, but find a way to fix this mess between you and Sheila. It's not doing any of you any good," I really want to, Valerie. But I don't want to force her, I let out. I need you to do me another favor, I said, pulling out the letter I had written for Sheila. I handed it over to her. Please, hand this over to Sheila herself. I don't want any confrontation with her brothers. I knew Alpha Leonardo and his brother, Kaiser, would prefer Sheila never returns to me, but I had to pour out my feelings to her, and I hope she reads it. Valerie took the letter. This will get to her, I promise. She was up from the chair, and I followed her action. Thanks again, Val, I said to her, watching her move to the door and exited. I took my seat. Now I just had to find a way to get both Thea's personal belongings and a strand of her hair, without her realizing what I am up to. Meanwhile, I just hope Sheila reads my letter and returns to the pack, because it hasn't been the same without her. Sheila's point of view. I flipped through the pages of the grimoire in my hands. It was my mother's grimoire and passed down to the female witches in my family, since it was the females in my family that were witches. My fingers trailed on the words on the page, reading through them. I was in my mother's private spell room on the top floor, going through her stuff. It's been 2 days already since I have been here at my brother's pack, and I've locked myself in here, reading through my mother's journal and practicing some spells from her grimoire. I just realized my mother was a weaver. Every witch had a special gift to their magic. It all came differently. Some witches were channelers, capable of channeling magic from anything that had magical energy in them. Some were weavers, like my mother, also known as creators of spells. We had the visionaries, who could have a glimpse of the future, the healers, and a lot more. Sometimes, a gift usually surfaces with time, but so far along with Valerie, we've realized I could both channel and create spells, like my mother, even though it was odd for a witch to possess more than one gift. I flipped to the next page and tried another spell from her grimoire. Even though my head was banging hard against my skull from tiredness and my body was demanding some rest from exhaustion, I just couldn't return to my chamber and fall asleep. Among many reasons was the fact that he'd always appear in my dreams. The Dark Lord. I didn't know why I kept having these dreams, or why that man I barely knew could invade my dreams, but every time, it felt so real, almost as if he'd been right next to me. I shut Mother's grimoire, sighing. This was becoming difficult, and as it was, I was in dire need of some sleep but just couldn't get some rest. I closed my eyes, resting my head against the wooden shelf. I missed Killian. I missed him so badly that I wanted him right next to me. I didn't think it was ever possible to miss someone, almost as if you needed them to survive. That was exactly how I felt. I missed my mate badly. And these few days away from him made me realize the bond between us was something that couldn't be easily severed. And I had made my decision. I wanted Killian. I shifted my attention to the door when I heard some sounds coming from outside, and almost immediately, it pulled open and Valerie stepped in. I pulled myself up on my feet to greet her, pulling her in for a hug even though I just saw her the previous day. "What brings you here?" I asked quickly, sensing there was a reason for her abrupt arrival. Did something happen at the pack? Before I could ask, my emotions were visible on my face. "Everything is fine, Sheila. But I can't say the same for the Alpha," she said, and at her words, I felt a churn within me. "Well, how is he?" I asked casually, folding my hands against my chest while returning Valerie's stare. Worse than you are, she muttered, pulling out a brown folded paper from her cloak. She handed it to me. What is this? I asked, examining the folded paper. It's from Killian, and he begged me to ensure this got to you, Valerie said, regarding me. You know I never fancied that other woman, just don't let her get everything so easily, she voiced, letting out a small smile. I can't stay long, I have to go, thanks, Val, I hugged her once more, before she went to the door, pulling it open, and to our surprise, Leonardo was right outside. Valerie sent me a final glance before leaving. I placed Killian's letter on the shelf as my brother gated in, his eyes moving from the letter to me. You look terrible, Sheila, you should get some rest, he offered, and I wished I could. But I couldn't, without having dreams about someone I shouldn't. And the worst of it all was, in those dreams I found myself making love to the golden-eyed. I will try, but I keep having bad dreams, I mutter carelessly, arranging Mother's stuff I had removed from the shelf. Dreams? What dreams? Leo asked, his blue eyes that were identical to mine watching me cautiously. I didn't think it was wise to let my brother know I was having indecent dreams about someone that was after my life and wanted me dead. Bad idea. What if they aren't just dreams? Adi said, and I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her words. There she goes, disappearing when I need her and suddenly resurfacing when I don't need her. I'm being serious here, so what are they? I asked sarcastically since she was now the smartass. Don't tell me they are visions of the future I haven't experienced yet. I muttered in a sarcastic tone, pulling my attention back to my brother. Dreams about someone I shouldn't be dreaming about, I replied. Killian? He asked, and thankfully, there wasn't an atom of rage in his eyes. I nodded, nonetheless. Only if my brothers didn't hate my mate, I could appreciate some sincere advice, even though as it is, I wanted to go back to Killian. Well, he's been a complete wreck, his words caused my gaze to shift to him abruptly. I wasn't surprised how he knew this, he had people always stalking Killian's pack, but I didn't think he'd be honest about it. So I heard, I mutter back. I really preferred you stay, and never go back to him, sister, he said, moving closer to me. I didn't say anything, having a feeling he had more to say. But whatever you decide, I'm going to stand with you, regardless of if I liked it or not, I smiled. Thank you, Leo, I said to him, settling on the chair in the spell room. Now could you tell me what happened with the friend Valerie, Kaiser, and Lorenzo went to see? I asked. Valerie won't say anything, and neither would Kaiser. What happened? Leonardo clenched his jaw, pulling his eyes away from me. It's nothing serious. The witch was a friend of our mother's. You might remember her, she was there that night you were taken, and… I prodded. Leonardo's eyes fell on me, and for a second it looked like he had something to say, but he changed his mind. It doesn't matter. Everyone seems to have something different to say, it's utterly frustrating. He took a seat opposite mine. Are you talking about the council or our mother's friend? I was confused because Leonardo wouldn't tell me what happened at the last council meeting, and it seems as though he was talking about both the council and mother's friend. I guess both, he was up immediately. "That's not important, Sheila, don't worry yourself about anything. Let me do the worrying." His eyes held the familiar sadness I have always seen in his eyes. One could see the burden of guilt on his shoulders. He began to move to the door, but my call made him stop. "Leonardo," he swerved around, peering at me with his blue crystals. "You do know what happened that night wasn't your fault, right?" I said. I wanted him to know what happened that night wasn't anyone's fault, because both he and Kaiser seemed to think differently. I just know things would have turned out differently, had it been Father and I were there that night when they attacked. His words caused me to drown in my thoughts. I couldn't help but wonder if things would have turned out differently had it been Father and Leonardo were around that night. Would Mother and Father still be alive? Would I have been taken that night? Whatever the answer was, there was no point thinking about it. No one could be certain of what might have happened. "There's no point thinking about it, Leonardo, and believe me, you've done enough for me. Both you and Kaiser," I said, fighting the stinging in my eyes, but that was the truth. The fact they never kept searching for me was enough. And still, they found me and made me remember what it was like to have a family that cares. Leonardo released a small smile, walking to the door, before stopping. He spun around. "Oh yes, I almost forgot. How much do you know about Killian's lover?" I creased my brows. "Thea." Leonardo nodded. "Not much, I just know what she is, and she's obsessed with Killian," I said. "Why?" "I tried to learn more about her in the past, but there wasn't much on her before she arrived at Killian's pack. And I don't trust people with little past," Leonardo said. "She's always been after you and Killian, yes. It's like she made it her personal vendetta to split us apart." I was up from the chair. "There you have it, sister. Are you really sure she's expecting Killian's child?" he asked again. I nodded. "Yes, I confirmed it. She's pregnant and it's Killian's." Leonardo asked again. "Yes, she is." I paused halfway through my words. I wasn't sure. But I doubt if Thea was capable of pushing someone else's child to Killian, just to keep us apart. No. I shook my head. That was impossible. Firstly, it would mean Thea has a lover in Killian's pack, and secondly, it would be utterly sick and wicked to do such a thing to Killian. Oh, goddess, what was I thinking? I knew best what darkness lay within that woman. And it scared me to think she would go to that extent to separate Killian and me. Sheila's point of view. I was in my chamber. And I just couldn't fall asleep after my conversation with Leonardo. I couldn't stop thinking of the so many possibilities that Thea could have a lover and her child wasn't Killian's. And I wished that was the case. But I only sounded like a mate who was trying to refute the obvious truth that another woman was expecting her mate's child. That was exactly how my newfound theory and suspicion sounded to me. But I didn't care how I sounded. I had always trusted my gut feeling, and I always knew something about Thea was off. She was capable of doing anything to remain in Killian's pack and keep us apart. And I gave her what she always wanted by leaving the pack. Valerie was right. I shouldn't let her get everything. I sighed, falling on the bed. My eyes fell on Killian's letter that was on the bed beside me. I reached for it, pulling it open. I felt a tug in my chest as my eyes began to carry each word. I couldn't fight the pain that enveloped me as I could feel Killian's pain embedded in each word. I tossed the paper on the bed as soon as I was done reading. My eyes were covered with tears that I couldn't hold back. I pulled my eyes open and I knew I had to go back. I had to be with Killian and I had to somehow find out if my suspicion about Thea was right. I curled up on the bed, with my eyes awake, thinking of Killian as I prayed for the arrival of dawn. It was better like this than having to fall asleep, knowing I would dream about someone else. Killian's point of view. I was at the door of Thea's chamber. I pulled it open gently without knocking, finding her sleeping peacefully underneath the covers. I closed the door behind me, my eyes searching around the neatly arranged chamber. It was going to be difficult to find anything here without Thea knowing. I walked around the room, glancing at every corner, hoping to remember something I had seen with her the first day the goddess had cursed me to make our paths collide. My eyes fell on her dressing table and I went over there. Before I could take a look at her drawer, I felt a stir in the bed, and the rhythm of her sleeping heartbeat changed. She was awake now. I dived my hands into my pockets, glancing at the items on her table, knowing she was watching me. This woman just keeps getting strange, and this only increases my suspicion that she was dangerous. I turned around and she was fixed in a sleepy position and her long lashes were pressed close. I sauntered to the bedside, watching her pretend to be asleep for a while before turning for the door. I was almost at the door when I heard her soft call, making me stop and turn around. "Killian," she called again, pulling up from the bed a little. "You are awake? I didn't mean to wake you up," I blended with whatever drama she was going for. "What are you doing here?" she asked, scrutinizing me cautiously. "What else?" "To see you," I replied, taking slow steps toward the bed. Thea positioned herself in a sitting position, intentionally adjusting her white velvet nightdress so that one could see a detailed outline of her everything she wanted to show. "That's sweet, Killian," she released one of her smiles that had successfully blinded me all this time, making me believe she was the purest of hearts when she was only a devil incarnate herself. "How are you doing?" I asked, finally next to her. "Great, just a little sad you don't come around often." "Sometimes, your child misses you," she muttered, pulling her eyes down to her stomach. I could feel Riker log himself out from the surface. I took a seat on her bed, my hand pulled up to her cheek, caressing it softly. Thea leaned into my touch. "Oh, Killian, you have no idea how much I missed you," she whispered, as my hand moved to the back of her neck, getting lost in her long ebony hair. Thea placed a hand on my chest, leaning closer to me, her lips were aiming for mine. "Thea," I pulled up from the bed, shoving my hand into my pants. "I am sorry, Killian," she looked away from my gaze, and I saw a tear slip down from her eyes. How couldn't I see past this pretense? Suddenly, I felt rage in my bones. I turned my gaze away from her before I lost it. "I know things haven't been great between us, but you are expecting my pup, Thea, and I want both of you to be fine," I said to her, and she smiled. "Me too, Killian. I hate it whenever we fight. I want you to be careful, the warriors have been dealing with some unusual movement in the pack's territory. Some unknown wolves have been trying to break in, and I am guessing it's from your previous pack." I paused, watching her reaction. How can you be so sure? It could be unrelated to my past, she said, counting her words, regarding me deeply. Or completely related to it. Remember, Thea, I drew closer to her on the bed. You are now carrying my pup. Your safety is my priority. Killian, she smiled, pulling out from the bed. I love it when you get protective over me. But he doesn't even know where I am. How can you be so sure, Thea? If he wanted you dead, he wouldn't stop until he found you. I was getting annoyed. But I have been under the radar since my arrival here. He can't find me. Don't worry too much, she muttered, and before I could respond, she began to strip, her eyes never leaving mine while her lips held a smile. In a second, the nightwear covering her body fell to the floor and Thea was standing a few feet away from where I was positioned on the bed. What are you doing, Thea? I asked her and she shrugged, naughtily. Tell me you don't feel anything, seeing me like this. She moved closer to the bed, and I was up from it, sidestepping her. I do feel something seeing you like this, and believe me, you don't want to know what it is. I stalked to the door. Killian, please don't go. I just miss being with you. I miss how we were, she sounded, picking up her night dress from the floor, and removing a brooch from it. My eyes followed her action. I haven't seen that brooch before, but it is quite old. I could feel my heart drum loudly in my ears. She dropped it on her dressing table, grabbing a silken robe from her clothes rack. I moved closer to the dressing table, glancing at the brooch. It looked old. It had a unique design with small star-shaped crystal stones. Yet, believe me, I do too. I miss how we were. We are expecting our pup, Thea. I want things to improve between us, I said, standing in front of the dressing table, so close that I could grab the brooch. Tears welled up in Thea's eyes, and she hurled herself closer, crashing herself against my body in a hug. I took the opportunity, and quickly swiped the brooch, diving my hand into my pocket. That's enough, Thea, I pulled away from her, turning for the door. I have to go. Please, Killian, stay a little longer, she pleaded. You could help me shower. Another time, Thea, I said over my shoulder, moving to the door. I couldn't contain the elation bubbling within me. I had managed to get a strand of Thea's hair earlier, and now I had something that might just work in knowing who this woman was. I reached for the door and stepped out, jamming it close from behind. I couldn't stop the smile that was so eager to appear. I felt so happy. I swerved around and froze on my spot as my amber eyes fell on the face of the woman I had been dying to see for days now. Sheila, I gasped, shocked, confused, and most of all extremely happy. She was right in front of me. Sheila was back. I began to move closer to her but stopped abruptly when I realized where we were at. I had just stepped out from Thea's chamber, and Sheila was standing right there at the door. She could have heard every word I muttered in there just so I could get what I had come for. Sheila's blue eyes moved from me to the door, and returned to me, holding no emotion at all. Sheila, I called her name again, softly, hoping she didn't hear anything, and even if she did, she wouldn't get mad, but trust me. Killian's point of view, I was dying to have her in my arms, but the expressionless look on her beautiful face scared me. She just came back, I didn't know if I could let her leave again. She took a few steps closer to me, her alluring blue eyes not breaking apart from mine. If I knew you didn't miss me as much as I did, I would have reconsidered coming back, she muttered slowly, taking one step closer that we were only now a breath away. I felt my breathing rise instantly, as her mouth-watering scent invaded my nostrils, and now I just wanted to feel her soft body against mine, and her sweet lips on mine. Are you kidding me? Can't you see what a wreck I am? My voice came out breathlessly, in a whisper, and I felt my heart melt away when a smile appeared on Sheila's lips. She leaned so close to me, that I could feel the softness of her. I can see Killian, I felt her sweet scorching breath against my ears, but if you missed me as you claim, you would have been kissing me like crazy by now. Her blue eyes had their seductive gleam, and without thinking, I gripped her waist, lifting her from the floor, and pinning her against my body as my lips tasted hers. I couldn't stop the sweet moan that escaped my lips, as I kept kissing Sheila without second regard to where we were at. By the time we pulled away, we were panting hard and my eyes had already darkened with desire. All I wanted was to make love to her for hours and pleasure her sweet body. Sheila pulled up to kiss me again, breaking apart almost as breathless as I was. Then do it, Killian, make love to me. I could see the passion and desire in her eyes, and a small smirk played across my lips. Without being told twice, I scooped her into my arms and navigated the way to my chamber. Sheila's point of view, Killian carried me into his chamber and I locked the door using my magic. Killian's eyes glowed a bright yellow, with a mix of his usual amber color. He was sharing control with his wolf, Riker. His eyes roamed my body once more, he closed the space between us, taking me in his arms and slammed me hard against the bed, and his mouth was on mine. It was insanely beautiful. He reached his own climax, groaning my name. He pulled out of me, as his limp body collapsed next to mine. We were both breathing heavily. My body was awfully strained and weak, but in a good way. Killian moved closer to me, wrapping his arms around me so that I was now resting on his large, manly body, with the covers above us. I love you, Sheila. I felt him kiss the center of my forehead, as drowsiness took over my body and I gave in to the sleep that has been eager to receive me these past few days. Killian's point of view, I stirred on the bed, inhaling deeply. I was forced to push my eyes open as the sweet scent of my mate invaded my nostrils and heightened my senses. I moaned into the softest brown hair that tickled my face. I had to choke back a laugh at the ravenous woman beside me and the manner in which her long natural curls were scattered on the bed. She was sleeping next to me, with a hand of hers on my chest, and her head next to mine. She was beautiful. I couldn't help but take a few moments to relish the sweet feeling of having my mate back again in my arms. I took my sweet time scanning her flawless figure. Her perfect thick brows, her rosy cheeks, and her irresistible lips. I fought the urge to kiss her awake. She was sleeping peacefully and the dark circles around the skin of her eyes told me she hadn't been resting well. She was still on the bed, with only the silk sheets covering the lower half of her body while her exposed side was making me hard already. I closed my eyes, remembering the blissful moment not too long ago. I smiled at the way her body recognized and reacted to my touch and kisses, her sweet moans, and the manner in which her lips took my name out. I loved it. I wanted to experience it all again. It was a feeling that would never grow old, and I was incapable of having enough of her. Never. I inhaled deeply, pulling my eyes open at the sound of Sheila's spiked heartbeat. Her heart was pounding hard, blasting in my ears. She was still sleeping, but the peacefulness that once covered her features was gone. Her face looked like she was having a terrible nightmare, one that frightened her. Sheila, I reached out to her, trying to pull her awake. But she wasn't waking up. Her body was vibrating intensely. I tried to get her awake but she wasn't responding. Suddenly the dim torches glowing in the room began to burn out of control. The flames near the window torched the draperies and a bigger fire broke out. Something was wrong with her. Whatever dream she was having was intensifying her emotions and was causing this. I held her in my arms, as her hold on me tightened. Sheila's claws extended, digging deep into my skin. I could feel crimson fluid rush down my body. But I didn't mind. My priority was to pull her awake. I connected to her through our mate bond. Sheila, pull out of this, I whispered through the mind link, also connecting to 80, her wolf. Wake up Sheila, I shook her gently, and her long lashes pushed apart. Sheila's eyes were glowing bright blue before their glow died and it became its electric tender blue, and her claws retracted. I sighed in relief. I didn't even realize I had held my breath. Sheila's blue eyes enlarged as she frantically scanned the chamber and the fire that had almost consumed the corners, journeying to us. She pulled apart from me, muttering a short chant, and in an instant, the fire in the chamber died off. Her affrighted blue eyes fell on her nails which were covered in my blood. Her heart rate spiked even more. It's all right, I spoke through the mind link, trying to calm her down. Sheila's eyes welled up with tears. I am sorry, Killian. I am sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, she rushed on. I pulled her in my arms, trying to soothe her. Shh, Sheila, don't. I didn't like to see her cry, much less because of something like this. But something was wrong. Her emotions were unsteady and all I could feel from her was fear and panic. I didn't know what had her like this, but I knew a simple bad dream was incapable of terrifying my mate. I waited till she had calmed down a little. Her hands were around my neck and her face was buried in the crook of my neck. Love, tell me what happened. What dream did you have? I asked her, and she pulled back to stare into my eyes. I could see the tears that attempted to gather again, but she fought them off. Oh Killian, I don't want to talk about it, please don't make me remember it, she said as a lone tear escaped her eyes. Shh, don't cry. Just forget about it. It's just a dream, I said, brushing away the tears that stained her cheeks with my padded thumb. You are fine here. We remained fixed on the bed for a second, and Sheila stayed a few more minutes in my arms. I'm glad you are back, I whispered to her, sweeping back the natural curls of her soft hair. She held onto me tighter, inhaling my scent. Me too. After a while, she pulled out of my arms and fixed the burnt mess in the chamber, returning it to its previous state. We got dressed and I pulled out the brooch I had taken from Thea's chamber as well as her strand of hair. What's that? Sheila asked as I placed the items on the table, moving to her side to help her tie the ropes of her dress. Something that could help me get answers, I replied, getting down to help her with her boots. Is that why you were in Thea's chamber earlier? Did you get that from her? She asked without showing any anger in her voice and gaze. I nodded. I want to find out something about Thea, I told her. Sheila's eyes remained fixed on me as she pulled her lips to say something, but a knock came at the door. I pulled it open to find Mason standing there. I couldn't connect with you, it's time for the meeting, he uttered, shifting his gaze past me to Sheila. His eyes widened a little bit, before lowering his head to her. I moved back to Sheila. I have a meeting now. Get some rest, and I will see you soon. I kissed her, shoved the items on the table into my pocket, exiting my chamber with Mason. He informed me the warriors had gathered at the court already. I had asked them to. I was going to discuss the pack's strategy and defenses should Lucius plan to attack. I got word that he was sighted in the west. He had many allies there, so I knew he was gathering enforcement to make an attack, and the pack needed to be ready when that happened. I had to protect Sheila. I told Mason I'd meet him in the court. You had to see Valerie briefly. I stopped by Valerie's spell room and knocked on her door. She opened it right away, offering me in. Did you manage to find anything? She asked as we walked to the wooden table in the room which had several objects and witch's journals on it. It seemed like she was in the middle of something. I don't know if this would work, but it's Thea's, and looked uniquely old. Like an antique, I showed her Thea's brooch, handing it to her. And a strand of her hair, I also handed it over to her. Valerie scrutinized the brooch, carefully. Would it work? I asked, folding my arms. It just might. But we'll have to wait and find out, came her voice as she stalked to the far end of the room, securely placing Thea's brooch and a strand of her hair. How long would it last? I asked her. An hour at most if the spell works, but if it doesn't work then the brooch you brought isn't really hers, Valerie said, and I swallowed some air. I really hope it works, I said. I went through a lot to get that. And besides, I was eager to get rid of this feeling in my chest, about Thea. Why the sudden interest in wanting to know about Thea? Valerie's purple eyes were on me as she asked, pulling out a journal from her wooden shelf. As I said, I just realized that there's a lot about that woman that I don't know. I just want to be sure, Valerie, I replied, and she nodded. I never liked her, nor trusted her either. So I guess it won't hurt to know about her, she voiced, sighing. I will get on the spell now. Hopefully, we will be able to find out about her ancestry, precisely her parents. With that, we can find out more about wherever she came from. Thank you, I smiled. I will leave you to it, I told her before exiting her spell room to allow her to work her magic. I headed for my office. I couldn't wait. I prayed to the goddess, and Valerie can find out something about Thea. Thea's point of view. I stopped at the entrance of the hallway, the instant my eyes fell on her, gracefully seated on a chair, having her meal at the dining hall. So it was true. She had returned back to the pack. I clutched a handful of my dress in my hand furiously, as my brown blazing eyes glowered at her from afar. As if sensing my presence, that witch tilted her head towards my direction and her lucent blue eyes collided with mine. She let out a lip-tight smile as I walked into the dining hall and settled on the seat opposite hers. I pulled up a shrewd smile, watching her. You are back. I muttered as one of the helpers served some food for me. My eyes never moved away from her. As you can see, she said, sipping from her drink, holding my stare. Why are you back? I thought you had some decency to understand the situation, I said, my entire focus on her as I couldn't understand why she was back. She was a problem. Her presence itself was a problem, and just when Killian seemed to be coming to his senses I paused, thinking. Well, I wasn't sure about that. It was rather odd that he came to my chamber to see me. Very odd. I didn't know what that was about, but since dawn, I had been rather edgy. I had a feeling a storm was heading my way. I couldn't afford anything to go wrong now, especially when Alpha Lucius was almost back. She tossed her spoon on her plate, pushing it aside. Her annoying blue eyes wandered lazily on me, eating me up. I am curious, Thea, she said, drawing in some air as I waited for her words, which would no doubt be annoying to the ears. Had this been your plan all along, or this? She raised a finger, pointing it at my stomach. Was just an unintended mishap that you managed to make use of? I creased my brows, setting my hands underneath my chin. What was she implying now? I didn't like any of it. Watch your words. You may be the Luna, but you can't speak against the Alpha's heir, even you know that much, I said to her, and her smile deepened, but it vanished as quickly, stealing away every emotion from her face. Her eyes pierced into mine, and she was quiet for a spitting second before her lips parted. That's a lie, Thea, she sparked furiously, as her slender hand almost banged against the table. The intensity of her words and voice sounded in my ears, and I had to lean back for a second. I know that child isn't Killian's, and you happen to have a lover yourself, she counted each word, as her eyes studied me, wanting so badly to take a peek at whatever was hidden behind those brown gazes of mine. I was shocked. How did she find out about him? Did she happen to know who he was? Or was she simply just playing me? I fought hard to mask every emotion from my face. You are crazy, and your obsession for Killian is making you assume stupid things. Why bother lying, Thea? She pulled forward, leaning comfortably on the table that for some reason, I was glad separated us. There's no one here, at least have the guts to say it to me, she sounded, her voice and body vibrating with rage as it ignited a blue fire in her eyes. I have nothing to say, much less to you, I voiced, and her eyes remained unmoving from mine as the silverware on the long table began to vibrate and I could feel the intense current in the air that suddenly surrounded me. Still, her eyes remained unmoving from me, and the fire in them burned more dangerously, that it almost scared me. Almost. You know what? I am leaving. I tried to get up from the chair, but I couldn't. I didn't even have control of my body. I couldn't move a muscle. My eyes darted back at her and I couldn't hide the fear that crawled in. Her blue eyes narrowed on me and I could feel my body hot as if set on flames. She was using her magic on me and I tried countering it, but I couldn't, at least not under her stronghold. Deny it all you want, but you know I'm right. And thank the sweet goddess I have proof, and I swear before Killian and the entire pack, I will unmask what conniving you are. She leaned closer to the table, her words coming out slow and hushed in a whisper. I held her gaze, trying to see through her raging emotions. I wanted to know exactly what she was talking about. What proof was she speaking of? I held my breath and forced out the traitorous fear that her words had placed within me. I couldn't get exposed now. Make whatever assumptions you wish, but it doesn't change the truth that I am expecting your mate's heir. I forced through gritted teeth as the air around prickled more dangerous and everything on the table was vibrating. This was all her doing. She was more crazier and deadly than I thought. You have no way to prove anything, so let go, I bit out, fighting against her hold, and immediately, I broke free. I was up from the chair, breathing deeply and fast. She had a shocked gaze on me, and I couldn't give an asterisk about what was going on in her mind. I had more important things to worry about. I rushed out of the dining hall and hastened to my chamber. I cursed internally at that tramp as I could still hear that crazed banging of my heart in my ears. I didn't know what had me like this, whether it was the dangerous gleam in her eyes or her words about her having proof that this thing inside of me wasn't Killian's. I began pacing around my chamber. I didn't like any of this. Now wasn't the time for Killian to find out I wasn't expecting his child, let alone oust me from the pack before Alpha Lucius arrived. I couldn't let that happen. I shut my eyes in an attempt to quell the stormy rage that was brewing within me as that tramp's words kept invading my mind, and I was on the verge of losing it when I heard my lover's voice from behind me. Thea, what happened now? I turned to him. I didn't even hear him come in. He moved closer to me. It's that tramp! I yelled. At the intensity of my scream there was an instant crack in the tall mirror on the wall, creating a double reflection of my angry state. She claims she knows everything, I sighed, with the look in her eyes. I couldn't tell if she was only baiting me or not. We have to leave, Thea. If she knows everything, then she knows about me. Killian will have us in shreds. We need to remove ourselves from this all-out war with Lucius, he muttered, as I could feel his panic. But his words only aggravated me. I didn't come this far to leave without having my revenge on Killian. Enough of this nonsense. So quickly you've forgotten everything Killian had done to me. This isn't just about Lucius. I don't want Killian dead, I want him to suffer, I said, reminding myself of the hate I felt towards him. This made me realize what I had to do. It didn't matter what he knew or not, but Alpha Lucius was arriving in a few days, and I had to be here. I moved away from him, placing my hands on the table. I had wanted him to suffer than Killian. Death itself was too good for her after everything she had made me go through from the instant I had the ill luck of meeting her. All right. What do you plan on doing now? He walked up to me, stopping a few inches away from me, and my brown eyes darkened as they found him through the mirror. Something I should have done a long time ago, I said, as a sweet, yet sick thrill raced down my spine, and I realized how badly I have been craving this moment. Tell me, Thea, what on earth is going on in that mind of yours? I could hear the curiosity stabbing his words. I am finally going to put an end to that peesh myself, once and for all. My lips curled into a smile as my brown eyes pierced right into that reflection in the broken mirror. I couldn't wait. Sheila's point of view. I remained silent and unmoving for a while, watching as Thea faded into one of the hallways. I sighed, clasping my hands together as I brought my eyes back to the table. From what just transpired between Thea and me, more than ever, I believed my suspicions were true. Thea wasn't expecting Killian's pup. That was a good thing, and it meant she indeed had a lover. But I had no way to unmask her lies. I had only bluffed, but I had nothing to prove that she had a lover while pretending to be in love with Killian. For that, I could only rely on Thea. I had never seen those shrewd brown gazes of hers ever hold in so much fear. It was obvious my words had shaken her to the core, and she cares a whole lot about protecting her despicable lie. I can only hope she does something drastic, something that would finally help me throw out of my pack, and permanently out of Killian's life. Oh, what joy that would be! I breathed in, pulling up from the chair. I groaned as I felt the stabbing ache in my skull, reminding me I needed more rest. I hadn't slept at length for 3 days now, and when I finally gave in to the exhaustion eating at me and took refuge in Killian's arms, it didn't last long. I was greeted again with a terrible dream, the worst I had had in days. This wasn't about the golden-eyed intruder that had managed to invade my dreams and left me confused. It made no sense why I would be having dreams about a man I had never met, and what's worse was that he was after my life. He wanted me dead. Even though I detested having such dreams about him, I wished it was about him though, at least it would have spared me the horror of having that dream in which I had witnessed Killian's death. I creased my black thick brows as the memory of that dream flashed through my mind again. I had no idea what had happened or where we were, but all I could remember vividly was Killian's death over and over again. It was horrible. I choked back a tear, wincing at the pain piercing my chest. I didn't understand it, but the image of Killian's cold and lifeless body scared me awake. I held my dress, heading to Valerie's spell room. It didn't take long before the door opened for me. I went in, but unfortunately, she wasn't in. I left and sauntered to the witch's quarters, but neither Valerie nor Lorenzo was in. I found Gwen in one of the witch's courts with a few witches. "Gwen," I called her attention, as I gated to them. "Luna, what brings you over here?" she voiced, lowering her head to me. "I was at Valerie's spell room and I can't find either her or Lorenzo," I told her, as we strolled out of the court into the large courtyard. "She left quite in a hurry a few hours ago," Gwen muttered. "Do you know where she went to?" I asked, and she shook her head. "She's visiting a coven at the village. I don't know why she went there, but seemed urgent, and had something to do with the Alpha's request." Her words made my features crippled as I remembered those items that belonged to Thea. I wondered if it had anything to do with the request Gwen was talking about. But I didn't ask further questions. I would talk to Killian as soon as he was done with his meeting. "And Lorenzo?" I asked, and again she shook her head. "He's not in as well," she voiced. I nodded. "Thanks," I smiled at her, leaving the court. Instead of heading back to the castle, I decided to go for a run in my wolf form to purge my mind of all disturbing thoughts. I stripped, and gave 80 full control of my body. In less than a quarter second, we were down on 4 paws in my enormous snow-white wolf. I snatched my dress off from the ground, using my canines, and we raced into the woods. It was a nice feeling having the calm wind against my fur and dirt beneath my paws. It was so good and relaxing and exactly what I needed. I could think clearly, and the only thing that I could think of was the identity of Thea's lover. Who was he? But I had no answer for that. I could only find an answer to that question when Thea's caught. I ran through the thick forests until I was out of breath and Adi was contented. After a while, I shifted back to my human form and got dressed. It was twilight already, and the sun had retired. I got mind-linked by Ria, telling me Killian was asking about me, and it was urgent. Just then, I felt Killian's presence at the back of my mind through our bond. "Oh, Sheila, where are you?" he asked, his voice sharp and urgent as well. "I went for a run, what is it?" I asked, fastening my boots in a hurry. "It's serious, we can't talk over the link." "Please hurry, everyone is gathered here," he muttered, disconnecting. I began to make my way into the woods to shift back to my wolf, but then I felt it. The lurking presence that blended in with the darkness that had dominated the earth. I was being watched. I walked further into the woods, taking the shortest path to the castle, and the feeling of being followed still stuck with me. I tried sniffing them out, but I couldn't get a strong scent, only a whiff that had been carried by the night's lonesome breeze. It wasn't a wolf from our pack and didn't have the scent or stench of a wolf or a rogue. It smelled different, at the same time new, and almost familiar. Very familiar. Instantly, my eyes widened as a thought crept in. I increased my walking space and took a swift turn in the woods, loving the darkness that covered everywhere as the tall canopy trees fought off every gleam of light from the glowing moon. I hid behind one of the tall trees, backing against it as I waited silently in hopes that I would see whoever had been trailing me. And I had a hunch, and deep down I wished I was right. But that would only mean trouble. I waited calmly, and in short, impatient seconds, I heard the painful cry of a twig that had been stepped upon from a near distance. Its screaming died and the woods returned to its eerie silence. I waited, and my heart skipped a beat when my eyes caught a figure moving quietly through the woods. It was her. I couldn't fight the smile that jumped on my lips. I was right. It was that witch. Lucius's witch. I hadn't seen her since the day I was abducted by Lucius. I backed harder against the tree as she moved past it, searching for me. She was wearing her red cloak, and its hood over her head, having the bottom of the cloak dance on the air at her hasty movements and desperation in finding me. I stepped out of the tree, and she stopped moving, feeling my presence behind her. "Looking for me?" I spoke into the darkness, which carried my sharp voice and echoed around the woods. I watched her cautiously, as she remained rooted on her spot with her back to me. Then she released an ear-piercing chuckle that morphed into a burst of short laughter. She stopped laughing as her hands pulled up to the hood on her head, and with a pull, it came off, exposing her long black hair. She took a step forward, slowly swerving around, and didn't stop until she was standing facing me. At this point, I detested the darkness that covered the woods as I couldn't see her face properly. Before I could initiate a step forward, she beat me to it, maybe out of eagerness to reveal herself to me. I remained unmoving as she swallowed the frustrating distance that separated us. My blue eyes were focused on her face the more she moved forward. But she stopped halfway in the woods. I could barely see her face still, and on that thought, almost on cue or from similar curiosity, the moon's bright rays broke through, pushing its way into the woods, and descended on her. The witch! I froze, as a shocked impossible gasp left my lips. My eyes were round as they took in the face I hadn't expected. She moved a few steps closer, wanting me to take a good look as her lips adopted a threatening smile. Thea, my lips finally parted in outright shock. Killian's point of view. I was still in the meeting with some of my warriors, Morgan, Mason, and Alan, when the door burst open and my eyes lifted and fell on Valerie's deep purple eyes. Her deep crystals reflected an emotion I have never seen before. It made my heart bang against my chest. "Everyone, leave. Now," I ordered, not taking my eyes off Valerie. The last time I had seen her was when I handed Thea's items to her, and I was informed by Gwen that she had left the pack in a haste. With the way she looked, I could only conclude that she had just returned and had come here straight away. I watched the last warrior leave my office, leaving just Morgan, Valerie, and me. Valerie stalked closer and I offered her a seat, but she shook her head. "What happened, Valerie?" Morgan asked, also feeling her uneasiness. "This is unbelievable, you all can't begin to imagine what I just found out," she muttered, and for a second, her purple eyes flickered with rage. "Is this about Thea?" I queried hurriedly, almost holding my breath. The gruesome look on Valerie's face terrified me. She nodded, and I felt my heart tighten. If this was about Thea, what could Valerie have found out to get her in such a state? "I just returned from the coven at the village," she began as I held on to her every word. "I did a spell on Thea's belongings as I promised, but I couldn't believe the result." "What spell?" Morgan rose from his chair. "To find out about her ancestry, precisely about her parents, and from there we were hoping to be able to track where she came from." "Her previous pack," Valerie explained. "What did you find out, Valerie?" I questioned and her gaze returned to me. At first, I couldn't believe the result of the spell. I thought it to be impossible, and there had to be a mistake somewhere, so I took it somewhere else, and had the witches redo it all over. Her words came out painfully slowly. "This is far worse than any of us had imagined. Thea Chrysler is a complete fake." I curled my hands in a ball as Valerie's words descended on me. But Morgan and I remained silent. I could feel there was still more Valerie was yet to share. The witch's result was the same as mine. "Thea doesn't descend from the bloodline of wolves, Killian. She lied to us all." "What?" I was up on my boots, with eyes wide with confusion. "How is that possible? She smells like one." Morgan took the words right out of my lips. Precisely why no one could sniff her out. She had cloaked herself, concealing her true scent. Cloaked herself. The confusion in me was rising by the second. "What are you saying? That Thea is a witch?" Valerie's words echoed unstoppably within the corner walls of my office, and as soon as her words died, an unwelcoming silence covered us all. "What in the goddess' name are you saying?" I spoke in a whisper. I couldn't think. This wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I knew something about her was wrong, but Thea being a witch was. I didn't even know what to call it. The result from the spell the witches and I conducted proves that Thea has magic coursing in her veins. She is a witch, and not a wolf, as she made us believe, came Valerie's words again. "What about her pack? And the alpha that's after her life?" Morgan asked, confoundedly. I raked my hair with my fingers, clutching a handful as Valerie's words sank deeper into my mind. "Lies. They were all lies. I voiced as I felt my body vibrate with rage. That's true. At this point, everything we know about Thea are lies. She didn't come from any pack and she doesn't have an alpha after her life. All those were blatant lies she said to infiltrate the pack, Valerie said, and my eyes landed on her. Infiltrate? Isn't it obvious? Thea's a witch who lied about her entire life. She came here for a reason. Let's think about everything wrong that has occurred in the pack from the moment she arrived here. Wait a second, came Morgan's voice as I couldn't keep still. I started stalking the floors of the office. This information was too much. And I just couldn't stop my mind from thinking about certain things that didn't make sense. Things I was finding hard to believe Thea was behind. She couldn't possibly be that witch. If she's a witch, how was it possible for Killian to think she was the gifted one, to begin with? Morgan directed his question at Valerie. She did it. I froze, realizing Thea was behind that misconception. Oh, my goddess! Thea was the one who manipulated my dreams. She planted herself in my dreams and made me think she was the gifted one. I am afraid that's nothing compared to everything that she's done, Valerie said. I suspect she's the witch that's responsible for everything that has been going on around the pack, right from the death of your warrior, Rowan. I buried my face in my palms. She's that witch, isn't she? Yes. She has to be, Killian. We've been searching for that witch all these while, and it's not just mere coincidence that Thea happened to be one. It made sense now. She had staged that incident. She wanted Sheila dead and had used Rowan to frame my mate up. Thea was the only one with you on the night your demon took control of your soul and you went on a rampage, Valerie said. She was the one who broke through my barrier spell and set you free. She's been the traitor in our midst. So, everything has been Thea's doing. Morgan stepped forward, his rage had begun to charge forward. The attack by the Fire Crest pack that almost killed everyone, including Sheila. Valerie nodded, making Morgan chuckle hard from rage and disbelief. She's also working for Lucius, Valerie sounded, so, I'm guessing he had sent her here, to destroy you and the entire pack. I closed my eyes in silence. She's the witch who had cast the dark spell on me and tried to make me kill Sheila. I'm guessing she's still the one that set her chamber on fire, I whispered, as everything Thea had done in my life began to flash through. But why would she even put herself in such danger? To manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. And to frame Sheila up. But that didn't work. I always knew she was a maniac, Morgan swerved to Valerie as I fell into my thoughts. I can't believe she was taking orders from Lucius. Morgan's words hit me. I couldn't believe it either. I knew she was working with Lucius, but something wasn't just right. Thea may have lied about everything she had told me, but the venomous hatred that was always rooted in her eyes whenever she spoke about the death of her family wasn't something that seemed to be all made up. Does anyone know about this yet? Morgan asked Valerie and she shook her head. No, I came here the instant I found out, she replied. Good, I moved closer to them. The truth about Thea only proves that she is an enemy of the pack and responsible for putting the pack in so much danger, which cost us lives of our own. And that's unforgivable, I said. We need to tread carefully, Killian, remember Thea is expecting your child. I haven't forgotten about that. But that doesn't exempt her from paying for her crimes, I muttered, mind-linking Sheila. She had to know about what we just discovered. Oh, Sheila, where are you? I asked, sharply. I went for a run, what is it? I could hear the worry that laced her voice. But I couldn't tell her through the mind link. It's serious, we can't talk over the link. Please hurry, everyone is gathered here, I muttered, disconnecting. I called for an urgent meeting with the ranking members of the court in a few minutes. We had to decide Thea's fate. Frankly, she should consider herself lucky she was pregnant. If it weren't for that pup, Thea would have had her heart ripped out this instant. I left the office with Morgan and Valerie, meeting Alan and Mason on the way. What's wrong, Killian? Mason questioned hurriedly as I mind-linked a few warriors, including Xavier, the head warrior, to hurry to the castle. I will explain everything later, I said. Thea had no idea we had discovered her already, and I wanted it that way. After what we know about her, she's capable of just about anything, and I liked the element of surprise better. I was almost at Thea's chamber when I was mind-linked by Sheila. You won't believe this, Killian, Thea is the witch. Sheila's words sounded so clear that I was forced to stop in my tracks. How did you? Before I could complete my words, Sheila spoke quickly. She is trying to kill me, she voiced sharply before disconnecting abruptly. I tried to connect with her, but I couldn't. Killian, what is it? Morgan came closer. Thea is after Sheila, I muttered, mind-linking every warrior in the pack at once, issuing out a command to find Thea, and capture her, dead or alive. It didn't matter now. My mate's life is in danger. Sheila's point of view, my whole body was numb. I still haven't recovered from the shock of finding out that Thea was the witch. She was the witch that has been after me and Killian for a long time. Oh, goddess! How couldn't I have known this, or at least suspected it? I knew Thea Chrysler was a devil in disguise, but never it occurred to me that she was a witch. A witch? That means she knew all along. She knew about Lucius, and about me. She knew about my identity. She knew I was a witch. Of course, she did. She found out when I had fought against her. Surprised? Her voice peeled into my mind, gaining my attention. My eyes leveled on her bright brown gaze that was gleaming brightly in amusement. Yes, this is indeed a shock to me. I never expected that you of all people would be the witch, I said, regarding her, as her smile deepened. I got to hand it to you, Thea, you played us all quite well. Thank you, but frankly it wasn't that hard. She dragged her hands up, and slowly pulled out the leather black gloves that covered her hands. All I needed was Killian, and it was very easy to have him wrapped around my fingers. You manipulated his dreams and made him believe you were the gifted one, I said, folding my hands against my chest. That was the easiest part of it all. That Alpha was just so desperate to find the supposed gifted one that was destined to free him and his stupid pack from Nell's curse. His desperation was his weakness that allowed me in. She tossed the leather gloves on the dried up dirt on the ground. And then, everything fell into place, until I came into the picture, I sounded. She paused, regarding me, before nodding. That's right. Everything was just fine until your supposed father came up with the brilliant idea of sending you off with Killian after finding out you were his mate," she grunted. "Honestly, I don't know what he was thinking. He wanted me to hate Killian, and that way, I would be useful to him when the time came for him to destroy Killian and claim his pack," I muttered, moving gently around, and Thea also circled around. "But you didn't like it, did you? That's why you tried to frame me up, so I would be executed, and when things didn't work out as you wanted, you murdered Rowan." "Oh, he was incompetent. He would have broken and spilled everything even before Killian lifted a finger to him," she sighed. "And I'm also guessing, you were the one behind the attacks on the pack." I prodded more. "Once again, that's also right. But unfortunately, it all backfired back on me. Those witches found out you were the gifted one and I was as quickly discarded. That was a wrong move on my part, but how was I supposed to know Killian's mate was the gifted one?" she yelled, moving her hands dramatically in the air. She was truly insane. Sheila's point of view, my whole body was numb. I still haven't recovered from the shock of finding out that Thea was the witch. She was the witch that has been after me and Killian for a long time. Thea was here for a reason. And I didn't need a soothsayer to spell it out for me. She clearly knew what she was doing the second she exposed herself to me. This was it. She was here to finish me off. My words earlier today must have shaken her to the core. And unfortunately for her, she played right into my trap, otherwise I would have never known that Thea was Lucius's witch. "You are one lucky tramp, you know," she huffed, angrily. "Believe me, it was always difficult having to come up with ideas to get rid of you, because every idea always ended up slapping me right in my face," she snorted. "At first I had thought it was an awesome idea teaming up with Killian's worst enemies, but then I found out you had some kind of relationship with them." "I mean, what? How was I supposed to know that?" She shook her head furiously. "And then I decided to let Killian end you as it should be. I hexed him, bringing out the demon within him, but another shock was waiting right at the corner. And I had to find out in the worst way that you are a witch as well." I listened to her as she kept on rambling, and confessing her crimes. But something didn't add up. And that was Lucius's plan in all of this. Lucius hated Killian and wanted him destroyed, but not me. He had told me to my face. He had good use for me. Lucius would have never authorized any of these, this was all Thea's. I had always known there was this obsession she had over Killian that I just didn't understand. Lucius wouldn't have approved of any of this madness, I told her. And he didn't. He was furious on the night of the blood moon when he found out I had sent word to the Fire Crest Pack to come for you. But what he couldn't see was that your presence in Killian's life was a problem itself to his plan and mine. And I would do whatever it took to accomplish my goal. "Which is?" I asked sharply. I was right. There was something else. Something she wasn't yet saying. Thea stopped moving. Her astute brown eyes gauged mine. "Killian," she spelled out slowly. "He's the reason why I am here," I could tell the honesty in her voice. But that didn't make sense. She didn't even love Killian, so why would she be after him? "You don't love Killian, you are only obsessed with him," I voiced, and she laughed, but I continued. "Why do you want to destroy Killian?" What's the reason, Thea? I know there's something because the second you arrived at this pack to this point that has been your goal, and this had nothing to do with Lucius. Thea was here for a reason. And I didn't need a soothsayer to spell it out for me. She clearly knew what she was doing the second she exposed herself to me. This was it. She was here to finish me off. My words earlier today must have shaken her to the core. And unfortunately for her, she played right into my trap, otherwise I would have never known that Thea was Lucius's witch. The smile from her face faded at once, and her eyes turned dark. But she remained silent. You have a lover, Thea, and you are expecting his child and not Killian's. Someone has been helping you in the pack. Who is your lover? I asked, and she smiled, but it wasn't deep or from amusement. It was from a deadly rage. Thought you knew it all, she sounded. It doesn't hurt to hear it all from your lips, I said again. He inside of me isn't Killian's. If it wasn't for the situation, I would have sucked out every magic from it, and gotten rid of it. But you needed to trap Killian, the words escaped my lips and she nodded. Yes, and get rid of you, permanently, she was smiling. Do you know the best part of it all? She asked rhetorically, clasping her hands delightfully. Killian would never find out about me or this thing inside of me, at least not yet though, she chuckled. Why? She asked again, obviously loving whatever was going on in her head. Because he would be too occupied grieving the death of his mate to realize anything, especially what is about to befall the pack. What are you talking about? I asked, in confusion. That doesn't concern you because I am going to finally end you. And that is the hardest part of this all. It may come as a shock to you, but I really don't want you dead. It took me a long time to realize you deserve a far worse fate than having to die in my hands. She moved a little closer to where I was rooted. My first option was to hand you over to the dark circle, but you are a problem now for me. And if I don't get rid of you now, everything would falter, and I can't have that. She shut her eyes. I promise when all of this is over, I will tell Killian you sent some kisses. Her brown eyes parted open and it was covered by darkness. I took a cautious step backward and her smile deepened. I connected to Killian through the mind link. You won't believe this, Killian. Thea is the witch. I informed him through the mind link. How did you? Before he could complete his words, I spoke quickly, having my eyes on Thea. She is trying to kill me, I voiced sharply, disconnecting abruptly when Thea muttered short chants using her magic and lifted sharp broken woods around the woods. They all gathered in the air, pointing at me. And with a dark smile, they lunged at me speedily. Immediately, my eyes shined brightly, and I lifted my hands in the air, blocking the disaster headed my way, and redirecting it back to her. She evaded it quickly, still smiling. Now, this would be fun, she breathed out. Killian's point of view. I had every wolf in the pack combing through the pack in search of Sheila and Thea. I was with Valerie and we were trailing Sheila's scent and magic to the woods. I was at a distance when Sheila's scent hit me strongly along with another unfamiliar scent. There, Valerie and I hurried through the woods, and we burst out into a small clearing in the woods where Sheila and Thea were. I could barely see anything as the air around us was rough and stormy and in utter chaos. They were fighting against each other, making use of their magic. I was about to rush in and join my mate when Valerie instantly held me back. Stepping right in front of me, she pulled her hands up quickly in the air and blocked the mighty murderous force that was headed our way. Just then, the stormy air around got sucked in and without warning, Thea's body was tossed harshly against the rooted tree trunk that was at a distance, and the rough air settled and became calm. Thea groaned and was trying to force herself to stand when Valerie hastened closer and shifted her fingers in the air. Immediately, Thea's body was up in the air. She pulled her hands around her neck, struggling against Valerie's hold. Valerie twisted her fingers and Thea's body dropped dead on the ground. Her body was covered with blood. My eyes left Thea and darted to Sheila, who motioned to us. "Is she dead?" "No. Just unconscious," Valerie replied, moving to where Thea's body was. She whispered a few chants at her. That would keep her unconscious for a while. Valerie was up, sauntering to us. "What happened?" I turned to Sheila. "How did you find out about Thea?" I asked. "I didn't. She revealed herself to me, and then tried to kill me," Sheila said, as I inspected her body. She had only a small wound on her head. "You need to see Maggie," I muttered. "It's nothing. It'll heal." Sheila's eyes moved down to Thea's unconscious body. "She is responsible for everything. She confessed it all to me." "I don't understand. Thea has been doing a good job keeping her identity hidden. Why would she suddenly reveal herself to you?" Valerie asked. "She was scared because I found out something she didn't want to get out," Sheila voiced, her blue eyes moving to mine. "Thea isn't expecting your child, Killian. She has had a lover all this time." "What?" Riker sounded instantly as he pushed himself to the surface. His voice echoed in my mind before Sheila's words sank in. "Thea has a lover?" I questioned again, and Sheila nodded, not taking her eyes off me. "Thea isn't expecting my child?" "Sheila, are you sure about this?" I bit out slowly, and once again, Sheila nodded. "I suspected it, Killian. And I confronted her during breakfast. She obviously panicked and wanted to kill me to cover the truth. And besides, she told me herself." Sheila counted each word, and as they filtered into my ears, I couldn't stop the air that escaped my lungs. Killian's point of view. I had every wolf in the pack combing through the pack in search of Sheila and Thea. I was with Valerie and we were trailing Sheila's scent and magic to the woods. I clasped my hands behind my head, and took several steps back, pacing around briefly. I couldn't stop the several emotions that rose within me. I just couldn't identify what I felt at the moment. I didn't know if it was hate or anger I felt. Hate for that fish for her lies, and making me believe she was expecting a child that wasn't mine, or anger towards myself for not realizing the type of person Thea was. Or maybe I felt both. But I couldn't deny the relief I felt. Thea wasn't expecting my pup. It was like a huge weight of pain and sadness was lifted off my shoulders. I couldn't even hide the elation I felt as I fought back the stinging water from my eyes. "Killian, I was forced out of my thoughts as Mason's voice sounded. Behind him was Xavier and some of the pack's warriors. "What happened to her?" Mason asked, his eyes on Thea. "She's unconscious for now. Take her to the castle's dungeon. Thea Chrysler is a witch, and now a prisoner of this pack," I told the warriors, and everyone could hear through the general mind link. I turned to Valerie as the warriors hauled Thea's body away. "We can't let her escape. Thea must pay for her crimes." "Don't worry, Killian. I will personally see to it," Valerie said, leaving with the warriors. I veered around, my amber eyes falling on Sheila. "How does it feel, knowing the truth behind your ex-lover?" Sheila moved closer. "Furious, but I swear I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel relieved that she isn't expecting my pup after all," I sighed. That was the only good thing out of this situation. I was finally free from Thea. Thea's pregnancy had unsettled me. I knew that even though Sheila and I made up now, as long as Thea and that child were in our lives, she would always stir up trouble. But that only means, the child Thea is expecting is for her lover, which no doubt belongs to my pack. All this time, she had someone helping her. I can't believe one of my own could be capable of doing something like that. Thea didn't say who her lover was, but I am sure whoever that person is, he'll try to help her escape. I sighed, hearing Sheila's words. "Maybe that will be a good thing," I uttered. "That way, we'll know the identity of the traitor that has been helping Thea. I hope we find him soon, because Thea spoke about something drastic that was going to befall the pack." Sheila sounded worried. "It must be Lucius. He'll be back for revenge, and maybe that's what she spoke about." I held her in my arms. "As soon as Thea regains consciousness, I will question her personally. There's something I have to find out." I kissed Sheila as we made our way back to the castle. We went straight to the dungeon where only Thea was locked up. Several warriors were stationed outside the dungeon. Sheila and I went in through the narrow passage. We found Morgan and Mason waiting outside the door for Valerie. She was inside with Gwen and Thea's unconscious body. I clasped my hands behind my head, and took several steps back, pacing around briefly. I couldn't stop the several emotions that rose within me. I just couldn't identify what I felt at the moment. I didn't know if it was hate or anger I felt. Hate for that fish for her lies, and making me believe she was expecting a child that wasn't mine, or anger towards myself for not realizing the type of person Thea was. Or maybe I felt both. But I couldn't deny the relief I felt. Thea wasn't expecting my pup. After a few minutes, Valerie and Gwen stepped out. "We've spelled the dungeon itself, as well as everything else. There's no way Thea will be able to use her magic in there," Valerie said. "Thank you," I told her, as she left with Gwen. I stepped into the dungeon. Thea was still unconscious. She was chained to a chair. Her wrists, ankles, and neck were confined to the chair. "Are you sure about this?" Sheila came from behind, her blue eyes landing on me. I nodded, and she crouched close to Thea, placing her hand on her. Sheila chanted a few unknown words, and almost immediately, Thea gasped, her brown eyes jerking open. "I will be right at the door," Sheila spoke through our link, leaving just Thea and me. Thea's heartbeat blasted against the walls, and I could feel her fear rise as she began to struggle against the confinements. I reached out to her face, removing the cloth that had covered her mouth. "What madness is this, Killian?" she shouted, as fury mixed with the fear that was carved in her brown eyes. "Set me free at once." "I don't even know where to start, Thea." I moved closer to her, crouching near her chair. "What are you saying, Killian?" Her breathing was rough, as her chest kept rising and falling quickly. Thea's eyes pulled to the door, and slowly it drifted on me. "Killian, please set me free," she begged in a soft voice. "I'm scared. I don't know what that woman told you, but I swear it isn't true. She tried to kill me and our pup." Her eyes welled with tears, and they escaped effortlessly. She was so good at this. But unfortunately for her, her game was over. "Really?" I raised my brows. "It's impeccable how you were able to deceive me, Thea." "Killian, please don't believe anything that woman told you. She's a witch, and she tried to kill your heir. Believe enough with the stupid rants, Thea. I know who you are already. You are a witch, and everything about you has been nothing but a lie. You murdered Rowan, you hexed me, you tried to murder my mate on countless occasions, and you've lied to the pack, claiming to be expecting my child, when the truth is, it isn't mine." Thea stopped moving as her gaze never left mine. "Tell me, is there anything else I failed to mention?" I asked, clasping my hands as I stood up. Thea clenched her jaw tightly, lifting her head so her eyes could meet mine. "I see you are all caught up, Killian Reed," she muttered gently, as a smile stalked her lips. "I guess I should reintroduce myself. I am Thea de Maury." Her smile deepened, and a dark, threatening glow appeared in her eyes. I froze. Killian's point of view. I froze as my amber eyes pierced right through that of Thea's. I didn't know why that name of hers sounded familiar, and the look she held in her brown eyes told me I was right. There was more to all of this. For the first time, all I could see in those venomous brown eyes was hate. A deep, unmistakable hatred for me. She hated me. But why? I took a step closer to her, as silence lingered between us for a second. "Am I supposed to know that name?" I asked, and the brown fury in her eyes only sparked more. But she didn't say a word. "Thea, you've been caught. And there's no way you'll be breaking free. Every one of those," I pointed at the chains binding her. "They've been spelled to keep you from using your magic, and also this dungeon. So, we could do this the easy way or the hard way." "I know you are working for Lucius," I began, but her hysterical laughter cut me off immediately. I paused, watching her until she was done. "You are completely clueless, aren't you?" she muttered coldly, with darkness in her depths. "I work with Lucius, I don't work for him. Enough with the mind games, Thea. You've confessed everything to my mate. And you've committed a great crime against the pack, by claiming to be carrying my heir. You've also broken our first rule, which is never to endanger the life of any fellow pack member, but you did just that when you sent word to an enemy pack to attack ours. You've also committed treason against your Luna, and that's the part I can never forgive, Thea," I muttered to her slowly, getting up on my feet. "So what, Killian Reed? Am I supposed to be scared?" she asked with a smirk. "At first light tomorrow, your punishment would be handed over to you by the court and me, and trust me, not even that child can get you off easily," I said to her, and all she could do was smile. But I ignored her. "I just have one thing bothering me, and I will get my answer to that. If that child isn't mine, then whose is it? Who is your lover, Thea?" The smile wandering on her lips vanished, and her eyes hardened. Don't tell me you are jealous? Did you really hope it was yours? No, Thea. On the contrary, you managed to make me exceedingly happy to know that my mate, Sheila, would be the only mother of all my pups. And I feel sorry for whoever has that child. Clearly, he's still bewitched by you, I told her, and she snarled in rage as I motioned to the door. You, Killian Reed. I swear on my life, I will get my revenge on you, she rushed on, insanely, her eyes burning brightly. Her instant words made me pause in my tracks, and as I swirled around, my amber pair got trapped in her revengeful brown flames that wanted nothing but to consume me. There, that's it. That hatred in your eyes. I've seen it far too many times, Thea. It reflects exactly what you are not saying. I kept on talking but she still wasn't saying anything. Her silence was frustrating. But I have to get the whole truth from her. I knew there was something else. Something that had to do with me. With every passing second, I could feel it. I could feel the hatred rooted in her gaze for me. The only time I had ever seen such vengefulness was whenever she spoke about her family and the supposed alpha who murdered her parents. Just then, I froze. My eyes held her burning rage as a thought flooded my mind. What did I ever do to you, Thea? Are you curious? She asked, her voice murderous, and eyes blazing harder than a volcano pit. I stalked closer to her. There's something else. Good. I'm glad you know that. And I swear that curiosity would eat you up, she began rambling on, but my large hand choked her neck, shutting her up. I held her frail neck in my hand, as my sharp claws dug hard into it. I could feel the warm crimson fluid that gushed out of her neck. Tell me. Thea groaned from pain, as she tried wriggling against the chains confining her. Her brown gaze still held its vengeful glow. You want to know? Fine. You murdered my father and his entire coven, including my mother. She spat the words right at my face. The intensity of her words tore my grip away from her neck and I backed away immediately, not from shock but from outright confusion. I murdered your parents? I voiced, even though the words sounded absurd in my ears. That's impossible, I couldn't peel my eyes away from her as her words kept resounding in my ears. That couldn't be. Never had I gone after witches, let alone an entire coven when I had a curse on my head. Impossible. She wasn't breaking a smile. You hypocrite. It was a few years after Nell's demise. You killed my father, Killian Reed, and afterward, incarcerated every member of his coven, including my mother, until you finally killed them, she screamed and I remembered. My amber eyes narrowed on her, as her last words made me remember. Now, you remember. At least we are getting somewhere, she counted her words, her eyes refusing to set me free. Your father was Thane Damori. I muttered in disbelief. You killed him, her voice was filled with disdain, and her words sharp. Yes, I did. And his entire coven, and I swear I don't regret it, I was honest. Thane worked with my father. He was like Nell's shadow and was as vile and dark as Nell was. He performed unsanctioned magic and was the same witch who helped Nell place the curse on my brothers and me, and the entire pack. After Nell's death the night the Black Blood Pack attacked, I became the next alpha and took it upon myself to correct every wrong Nell had done. I pulled out from the dark circle and rejoined the council, and I also tried breaking the curse. I had sought Thane out since he was the casting witch who placed the curse, but he refused to help us. Instead, he and his coven attacked the pack, intending to murder me. And with the curse on me and the pack, if anything had happened to me, everyone would have perished with me. That was what Nell wanted, and Thane wanted to fulfill Nell's wish. So, when Thane and his coven attacked, we were ready. And with the help of Valerie and her witches, I killed Thane and the entire coven who stood against my pack and me. And I don't regret it. You monster! Thea wriggled on the chair she was confined to, in an attempt to break free. I didn't know that man was your father. And I'm sorry you had to live your life knowing your father died in my hands, but he caused it by going against the pack. And I only defended and protected my people against a dark witch and his coven. You murdered my parents, and I swear I would shred everything you love into unrecognizable pieces, starting with your mate, she threatened. Save your breath for tomorrow when your fate will be decided, Thea. It's a shame you would end up just like your father, I sounded. And she laughed. You have no idea what coming your way. I will find out, I told her, turning to the door. And how do you plan on doing so? Torturing me? Well, that would be so stupid, Killian. You have no idea how much I've prepared myself, just in case this day would come. I stopped at the door. I really don't doubt that, Thea. Just hang in there, you have no idea what I've prepared for you. I walked out of the dungeon, paying no mind to Thea's relentless screams. I walked out to find Sheila outside. You heard everything, I said, and she nodded. She didn't say anything about her lover. It wouldn't be easy, but he could try to break her out, Sheila said. And I hope he does. I'm dying to find out who could have betrayed me in such a manner, teaming up with Thea, knowing she was against me and the pack, I told her, sighing. But she said something I heard. It has to do with Lucius, but I have no idea what it is. Could you find out? I asked her and she nodded. I could get into her mind, and find out everything, maybe even who her lover is. I sighed in relief, kissing her. That would be great. But no one should know about this. Not yet. All right, it's just between us.